Now you're not allowed to do that anymore.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
But it's a sign of this thing that is a real problem in today, where people will pretend something is something other than what it is if it suits their narrative.
All right, so in his most recent podcast, Joe Rogan seemed to be coping pretty hard for his good pal Elon Musk, who, if you've been living under a rock for the last week, has recently faced accusations of being an undercover neo-Nazi because he, allegedly, performed back-to-back Nazi salutes following his speech at Trump's inauguration last Monday. So being that Joe now has the largest political platform in the entire world, you would think that, above all, he'd value the truth, right? Well, as you'll see shortly during his 5-minute-long rant in defense of Musk, every excuse he makes just doesn't seem to add up, and it quickly becomes obvious that Joe Rogan's being completely delusional about this whole thing. I mean, from the very beginning, we can see that Joe's in intense denial, because he starts the rant off with the very weak argument that, at one point in time, the entire American education system implemented the Nazi salute during their daily Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
But this is the thing. This is what I found out last night. That's also how they used to do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, really?
The Pledge of Allegiance used to be done like this until the Nazis came along. And then we switched it to this. Yeah, that's it. That's how they did the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know
How
that.
crazy is that?
That's crazy.
That's in 1942.
Yep.
You just know you're in for a wild ride when Rogan uses this as his first line of defense for Elon. Like, based on Joe's logic, we can only assume that if Elon sported a swastika on his suit jacket or showed up with a picture-perfect Hitler stash on his face for the speech, that Joe Rogan would use this exact same argument. Like, yes, these gestures and symbols all had different meanings before World War II. Like, the swastika was and still is an ancient symbol of spirituality in Indian religions. And the toothbrush mustache, now known as the Hitler stash, was actually a popular style in the 1920s. But ever since Hitler rebranded them, nobody, and I mean absolutely no one in their right minds, so openly displays them to the public. Like, the fact of the matter is that Elon's heart goes out to all salute was the identical motion of the Nazi Sieg Heil. It wasn't just a tap on the chest and a wave to the crowd. It wasn't anything but the Sieg Heil. And he did it forcefully, twice in a row. So right off the bat, it's pretty clear that Joe's living in a fantasy world regarding all of this, as he refuses to acknowledge that Elon's gesture was a perfect replica of the Nazi salute.
That part.
There's going to be a screen grab of you.
Well, there's already a screen grab. This is what's funny. CNN, during the COVID times in particular, whenever I get in trouble, the photo they would use of me was me at the UFC weigh-ins. So when I do the weigh-ins, I announce the weigh-ins. I say, "Welcome to the weigh-ins, everybody." I'm
so
waving to the crowd. That's what they did. So they would use this photo of me
So
to
dumb.
try to make it look like I was some sort of a Nazi.
Whatever.
Because I'm waving to the
So
crowd. And they take a freeze frame of it. I'm like, "Welcome to the weigh-ins, everybody." I put my hands out to the crowd. I'm saying hi to everybody.
So he says the mainstream media did this to him when he was at the UFC, but the difference between his picture and Elon's video is insanely clear. Like, Elon did the exact motion of the Sieg Heil salute, even down to the exact cadence from actual neo-Nazi groups in historically accurate movies. I mean, for a guy that preaches the truth and lives by the motto of facts can't hurt your feelings, he seems pretty triggered by this sheer fact. But as you may have guessed, Joe's delusions just continue to get worse. For his third cope, he brings up the infamous picture of Kamala, AOC, and Obama that all the Elon fanboys used in defense of their Lord and Savior, which, even for Joe, is lower than I thought he'd go.
It's like, they're so funny because of this, there's all these photos of AOC with her arm out like this, and Michelle Obama. It's like everybody's a Nazi. It's so dumb.
You can go look at anybody and find that somewhere.
Yeah, if you move your arms at all.
Right?
You try to catch a ball. You know, anything you're doing where your arm's up in the air, now you're a Nazi. Like, oh my God.
Like, users on Twitter had already debunked this weak comeback days before this podcast aired, since they posted the actual footage from those alleged Nazi salutes. And as you can see in the videos, they're nothing like Elon's. Like, never did any of these people perform back-to-back Nazi salutes. So it's hard to argue that these weren't intentional by Elon, who's a self-proclaimed genius and the owner of some of the largest companies in the world. Like, even when Tim Waltz did it, he's very clearly doing it differently than Elon. So overall, I can confidently say that this claim by Joe is, as some would say, a nothing burger. But by far, Joe's most pathetic excuse is when he compares the gesture to Amar Barati's, the guy who holds the record for keeping his arm raised for over 50 years as a testament of his devotion to the Hindu deity Shiva.
How about that Hindu guy that kept his arm up in the air for like 60 years? You know that one?
Not familiar.
You never seen that? We talked about him the other day. Who brought him up?
I did.
Jamie brought him up. So there's this guy who has not put his arm down in like some insane amount. His arm is like shriveled. It's useless. It's
Why?
a devotion to Lord Shiva. So he has his
Okay.
to show his devotion. He decided, I'm going to keep my arm up forever. And now his arm's frozen in place. And now he's like a really old man. That's what he looks like.
Okay.
How crazy is that?
That's crazy.
He has a useless right arm now. Look at his fingers are all twisted up and fucked up. His nails are all fucked up. His right arm is essentially completely useless. It just stays like that. It doesn't move anymore. That guy's doing a Nazi salute forever.
I didn't
That's
think
how
about that. I didn't think about that.
So yeah, if you can't tell already, Joe Rogan's still processing all this, and he appears to be in the first stage of grief, which is denial. Like I think he's slowly realizing the direction his podcast and audience has been going these past 2 years, and in turn is coping extremely hard with the fact that Elon, along with some of his new audience members, do in fact support Nazi ideologies. And I say this because, if you don't remember, 32 days before the Nazi salute, he publicly tweeted his support for the AfD party in Germany, which is a radically far-right extremist group in Germany that shares beliefs eerily similar to Nazism. But of course, this is all conveniently ignored by Rogan as he continues his rant with what might be the most ironic thing he's ever said in his life.
But all these people on Twitter are just chiming in saying it's clearly a Nazi salute. He's doing a Nazi salute. Yeah.
No.
No.
So dumb.
It's so dumb.
It's not clearly.
Yeah, it's crazy. The whole thing's crazy. But that's a sign of the times, and they couldn't help it. It's illogical and weird, but it's a sign of this thing that is a real problem in today, where people will pretend something is something other than what it is if it suits their narrative.
This is just an insanely ironic thing to say, because it's actually precisely what he's doing on this podcast. I mean, guys, let's not beat around the bush here. The gesture was a Nazi salute, whether anyone likes it or not. Like as I mentioned before, it'd be identical to him having the Hitler stash or wearing the swastika on his suit jacket. It's the same thing. But to save the best cope of Joe's for last, Joe finishes his rant by describing to a T what's happening before our eyes between Elon Musk and Donald Trump.
And that's what this is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Power story.
Yeah, the power of story. That really truly is a great example of the power of story. Because the story that everyone's afraid of is that this right-wing dictator has gotten into power and he's brought with him this billionaire oligarch who happens to be one of the richest men, if not the richest person on the planet Earth. And this guy is secretly a Nazi.
Yeah,
and he's
if
been
only.
hiding it all these days until Trump got in office.
It'd make
He's
a
like,
great movie.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If only. It would make a great movie.
Yeah.
I mean, ever since Elon declared his support for Trump, he also declared his support for the alt-right political party in Germany, which shares the identical philosophy with the Nazi Party of World War II, as I said before. So yeah, guys, the level of copium Joe's huffing right now is just mind-warping. I mean, for Elon to not immediately come out and deny any affiliation with Nazism should tell you just about everything you need to know. Like his one and only response to this whole thing was a weird little haiku that he wrote, where he suggests that, oh, it was all a joke. Like the guy's completely off his rocker. Let's not forget how he started the very same speech that day.
Yes! This is what victory feels like. Yeah! Can you imagine how awesome it will be to have American astronauts plant the flag on another planet for the first time? Bam! Yeah!
So yeah, guys, in my honest opinion, this was a pretty pathetic response out of Joe, and it's pretty clear what Elon's intentions were, but let me know what you think of it all in the comments down below, as these are, after all, just accusations.